Hi everyone. This is the second video. I did the other one which talked about the introduction and the discussion for week 2 and posted that yesterday. And so now we're going to talk about your assignments, which is the 2.2 written assignment. And then I'll briefly mention the quiz throughout when I think of it. But yeah, we'll go over the quiz. It's not necessarily the answers, but how you can take it. All right, so let's get going. Okay, this and wherever it says 2.2 or 3 point whatever is where the assignments are. Let me go back and go over this just a little bit real quick. For those of you that are new to Harrison, here's a written assignment for week 2 and then the professionalism quiz. I'll tell you right now, I was going to tell you later, and that is that the quiz, you can take it twice and it keeps the highest score. If you want a study guide for the quiz, you're going to find the study guides for the quiz up in the introduction, and you will see that in the first video that I did yesterday. Week 3 has basically the same format: introduction, the discussion, written assignment, quiz. Week 4 gets a little bit more. The introduction, discussion, written assignment here, which is a case study that's worth 15 points. There is a tutorial on professional writing. I would suggest you watch it. And then you have the written assignment and the quiz. And that's how we go through and do the rest of this. Okay? So let's get back up here to written assignment review activities. Also, I wanted to mention, this is the first time I have tried to do a lecture as close to face-to-face in the classroom as I can make it. And so I wanted to ask you that if there is anything else you would like me to include, if I possibly can, go ahead and send me an email through Canvas and let me know what else you would like to see, and then I will see if I can do it. And we'll talk about it. Maybe I could do it. Maybe we need to morph it down a little bit, whatever, but work with me and so I can do what you need me to. Okay. And I'll apologize for my voice. It is because I have allergies and they don't like me today. So I'm trying to drink water so that you don't hear this grovelly voice. All right, now we're going to go back to the written assignment, and we're going to talk about the textbook as well. Chapter 2 starts on page, I'm getting to the front of it. I have my book open. Page 41. Okay, so this took me way back to the top. And you guys are probably more experienced. Oh, okay. Notebook, figures, labs. This should be pretty much like your book. Ah, not unit 2, unit 1. Okay. Page 41. I can count. Isn't that cool? Yeah, I'm a little offbeat, but that's okay. All right. Here is the start of chapter 2. And adding value to professional teams. And here's where it says the learning objectives. So when I refer to the learning objectives, you can see that it's always in the right-hand margin. And so your first exercise that you have to do that we're going to talk about is exercise 2.2. But for now, we're just going to talk about chapter 2. I just want to discuss this. So I'm going to make this screen a little bigger for now so that we can talk about it better and basically just discuss the chapter. Minimize that. Okay. That way it's not as annoying. Okay, so there's a lot of times when what do digital age employers want? Now, you guys and what's called millennials, which is you guys, are in an interesting position in that you have people that you're working for that is supervising you that you could classify old school. I'm one of them. And they are part of the baby boomers. And so most baby boomers anymore, if they're in the business place, has kind of caught on to the digital age and is very proficient with it and is really good. And some you're going to have to just bear with because they just haven't quite got it. These may be people you're working with. But digital employers are interested in your education, your experience, hard skills, which we're going to talk about, and soft skills. Hard skills are the technical skills. Soft skills are increasingly important. Yes, I'm reading out of the book. Desirable competencies are not only oral and written, but also active listening, which you're going to get to do some things with in this for this homework. Appropriate nonverbal behavior. Have you ever been talking to someone and their eyes start rolling? And so what does that trigger to you? Or all of a sudden there's position. If they're standing, they kind of lean on one hip and they fold their arms. All that is nonverbal behavior. You can tell that they have either tuned you out, off, or they don't want to be there. And then proper business etiquette. This is important no matter what field you are in, whether you're millennial or whether you're a baby boomer. But baby boomers have a tendency, I think, to put more emphasis on proper business etiquette. I worked for Purdue for about 10 years, and the better part of that time, I had to deal with manufacturers throughout the state of Indiana and holding seminars and getting group meetings together for them. And proper business etiquette was vital. There's still a lot of what's called old school people out there, and you have to pay attention whether you like proper business etiquette. For the most part, it's still required. So it's a good thing to know should you find yourself in that position. And people want efficient and productive team members. All right. Okay, so we have a blank page. Okay, it just didn't load because this is page 43. Isn't this cute? Yes, I know I skipped ahead. I was trying to jump it. Okay, page 43. It's not 42. Okay, let's go on to 43. Reality check is collaborating in virtual teams. This has been important for the last several years. Used to, if you have a manager in Dallas and then, or an executive in Dallas and you had an executive in New York, but the main corporate office is San Francisco, you would fly in those executives from wherever they were to San Francisco. You put them up in the hotel for the night before the meeting and the night after the meeting and everything in between. And you'd give them so much per day that they could spend on food and taxis or whatever. It was really super expensive. So then people decided as technology developed to create virtual teams. And that's where you could do everything uh, based through the internet. And that is really cool, but it's a whole lot cheaper too. Um, so virtual teams group of people who are aided by information technology to do face-to-face with largely across geographic borders. It does make an interesting statement here where it says Yahoo and Best Buy have recently revised their work at home policies. Consultant Jessica Limnack concurs the 9 to 5 office as we know it is more often than not. Uh, Basically, what happens then is that what's happening a lot is big companies would need to have so much floor space per employee. You need a desk, you need telephone lines, you need computers, you need the file cabinets. You need all this stuff for your employees. Whereas if your particular working job position can be done at home and you have someone that can actually produce at home, a lot of employers are doing that. They're doing two different types of things. They're doing it at home where you can work from home, uh, like I do. I work from home, set my offices. Most of the time, I work from about 9 to 5, sometimes 9 to 6, even though it's, but I'm available to do doctor's appointments and then work a little later or make up the time. I'm not on the clock. It's my decision. The other thing that people are doing, it's not virtual teams, but if you have salesmen out there that trying to make a product or a sales representative, what a lot of companies are doing is renting office space, putting in a bunch of desks, and you sign up for when you're going to be in the office. So you may have 30 people come through, 10 desks, and those 30 people are going to basically reserve a desk at that company. So when they come in off the road, they can go in, they can sit down, they can submit their paperwork, they can get on the computer, and then they leave. And the next day, there's somebody else at that same desk. Again, it's cost efficient. And that has nothing to do with virtual teams, but it's the way the things are going. And here's Steve Jobs. There's a temptation in our networked age to think that ideas can be developed by email and iChat. Creativity comes from spontaneous meetings and random discussions. So I'm not going to bore you and read every page, but I think this is really interesting because if you stop and think about it, there are 4 phases of team development. So as I read through them, I want you to think about them and say, yeah, okay, or no, you disagree. Forming. This is the critical first stage. You say you, and you are going to be on this team. All right, so you may know each other, you may not know each other. If you may feel awkward because if you've had previous work experience with an individual that wasn't exactly uh, the nicest. So now all of a sudden you're on a team with this person or this person you've never met to, you've said hi in the hallway, and now you have to work together. All right, so this is just where you kind of fill each other out, kind of like almost a first date, at least my way back when what I had with first dates. I don't know what first dates are like now. All right, storming is when you're a little bit more comfortable with one another. You can lose your temper. You don't know how much you can trust the other person to come up with good ideas. You don't know if part of the team, this person that's part of the team is really going to pull their weight and contribute, or whether they're just kind of there because they said they have to be there and that's about all they're going to do. Norming, okay, so this is everybody playing nice in the sandbox. You know what you're going to do. You know who's leader of the group, whether they've been a professionally acclaimed management said you're leading the group, or someone that just kind of rises to the top and kind of acts like they're the leader. And okay, fine, we're going to go along with that. That works. And you actually kind of start making nice, and you can start talking to each other, and you can start working through what you're supposed to be there. Performing is when you're really doing what you're supposed to be doing. You have loyalty, you can do it, you get successful. And here's a real brief chart that just really takes all this up here and puts it into here. I like charts and I like bullets because it's short and sweet. All right. Positive and negative member traits, combating groupthink. This is in your discussion question for this week. And I like this book because they do have a lot of graphs and it makes it really easy if you don't like all these extra words to do this. Also, I'm not super sure, but a lot of times when textbooks or people write quizzes, they take a lot of their quiz questions from the graphs. So I haven't had a chance to look at all the possible questions for this class, but just a heads up, either this class or other classes, a lot of your test questions can come from graphs. Reaching group decisions. So here we're talking about the majority. There's different kinds of group decisions and what defines a successful team. Six steps for dealing with conflict within a team. So listen to ensure you understand the other person's position, show concern, look for areas that you can mutually agree on, invent new problem solving, and reach a fair agreement that hopefully everybody can live with. Here's a checklist for developing team effectiveness. And here's learning objective 2. Now, your assignments does not involve learning objective 2. It involves 1, 3, and 4. But this is still a good section to go through. Studies of executives, I think this is an interesting statistic. Studies of executives in Europe and the United States reveal that 60% of managers devote 21 to 60% of their work weeks to meetings, with the average meeting lasting literally 3 hours. No, thank you. And they classify meetings as consisting of 3 or more people, and then go on to further explain it. Face-to-face meetings being productive, deciding whether a meeting is necessary or not. Some of you may be working in a place where if you drop a dime on the floor, someone has to decide on a meeting about who's going to pick it up. There are other times that you have meetings that are really worthwhile, worth your time. And so if you're going to be intensive problem solving, it's 5 or fewer. Problem identification, information reviews and presentations, motivational and virtual. Now, I'll tell you, if you're ever in charge of getting a group of people together for a team, if you're trying to do intensive problem solving, you don't invite just 5 people. You invite 7 to 8 people because you can be guaranteed at least 2 to 3 will not show at any one given time. Sick child, family emergency, found something else to do during the time of the meeting. You need 5 or fewer that actually are going to be there. So you never invite just the exact number that you need. You won't find that written anywhere too much. Distributing advanced information, what an agenda should look like. Even if you're medical, a lot of times rather than hire somebody else, medical assistants will also be responsible in some offices for also doing some of the clerical things. So, this is pertinent to you as well. And be aware that when you go to get a meeting started, that based on the culture of who's on your team, different cultures have different thoughts about how a meeting should start. All right, in some cultures, it's okay, it starts with, yeah, it's there at 5, but we really don't sit down and start talking till 6 because you have that hour to talk and figure out and just conversationize. In the States, it's if you call a meeting at 5, it better start by 5:05 or 5:10. So just kind of be aware that there is cultural differences to meetings as well. And here's the things that you should pay attention to when you're in your meeting. This is a very good chapter to read. Practices and technologies in virtual meetings, email meeting minutes and how to do that. So a lot of times in meetings, they say, okay, who's going to take the minutes? Audio conferencing and video conferencing. This is what I was referencing earlier, where it's getting to be more and more through the internet. It was several years ago, and I think it's gotten even more so now. Web conferencing, interacting professionally, ground rules for virtual meetings. And here's just a real nice summary. Again, if you're trying to take a quiz and you're familiar with these summaries at the end, it may help you to know where the summaries are and may help you with the quiz. Now, learning objective 3. We do have an assignment regarding learning objective 3. Listening. I think this is a fun one. Have you ever been able to tell when someone's not listening to you? Excuse me. Hang on a second, guys. Sorry. Experts say that we listen at only 25% efficiency. In other words, we ignore, forget, distort, or misunderstand 75% of everything we hear. I think that's a really interesting statistic. Types of workplace listening: listening to supervisors, listening to colleagues and teammates, listening to customers. How can organizations improve their customer listening techniques? And here is a really nice chart. Untrained listeners versus trained listeners. And you really want to be under the trained listeners side, because if not, you may miss something. Interrupt the customers and just go through this and be familiar with it. It's just good practice. 10 keys to powerful listening skills. Control your distractions. Become actively involved. Separate facts from opinions. Identify important facts. Avoid interrupting. Ask clarifying questions. Clarifying questions really tells people that you're listening, which is kind of cool. But you may catch them off guard. Listen and learn. It says Oprah Winfrey owes much of her success to the artful practice of listening and responding. Paraphrase. This has been around like forever. This is also, I know, I put it down as covering your backside, because if someone says something and it sounds a little funky to you, you think about it, and then what you do is paraphrase it. You say it back in the way that you think they said it. And you could go, well, if I'm clear about what you're saying, XYZ, and if you understood it and you're right, the person will go, yeah, that's what I said. Or they'll go, no, you missed a boat. This is what I really said. And you can paraphrase again the second time around as much as you need. It's called parroting, and that's in counseling terms. It's an old counseling term. And so this is a really good technique to start using like most of the times. Open-ended questions makes people think and actually come through. Close-ended is yes, no. Capitalize on lag time. Be aware of gender differences. There used to be a seminar put out, and I lost website for it, and it's how men talk differently than women. And women have a tendency to be nicer and have, according to this seminar, a lot of times let men off the hook when things get confused. Oh, it's my fault. I didn't understand, and that's really kind of you really shouldn't do that. Male listeners are less attentive, provide sporadic eye contact. I can't read. Women listeners tend to be more attentive, provide steady eye contact, remain stationary, and nod their heads. Non-verbally, I love looking at people who say that they're listening. This is learning objective 4. This is our last one that we're going to have to talk about as far as the assignment. This computer just crashed again, and then we interpret that to mean the loudness of her voice and the act of slapping the machine is an intentional emphasis. Okay. But people can also communicate non-verbally. Jeff hangs onto the speaker's rostrum and barely looks at the audience. That's that big podium thing that they stand behind. And barely looks, he's sending a nonverbal message of fear and lack of confidence. He's hanging on for dear life to that speaker stand. Nonverbal message in situations speaks louder than words. There are forms of nonverbal communication. Eye contact, facial expressions, postures and gestures, time when they keep checking time. Space, territory. Depending on where your culture is from, this varies. Okay. Some people don't mind you being right up next to them, even though you really don't know them. Basically, in the United States, they're coming into your personal space. If you ever had someone do that and you kind of felt cramped, you back up and take a couple steps back from them. Some cultures doesn't mind being shoulder to shoulder even if they don't know you, and they think that's perfectly okay. Like it says down here, if someone violates territory, you feel uncomfortable and defensive and step back. So territory and space, these sort of go hand in hand. Appearance of business documents can turn people off. The appearance can tell whether or not you care about your work and the pride that you take in putting out something that is readable, that's in good, you know, a font that people can read. If right now I like fonts size 12 to 13, some people like font size 10 to 11, and I would rather not have font that small. Appearance, your grooming, your clothing, your posture is all nonverbal. And here's the 4 space zones for social interaction. This is according to 4 Americans. Intimate, so you only let someone that's real close to you in with 1.5 feet. Your personal zone is a friend. Social zone is, you're at a party, 4 to 12 feet. Public zone, you don't know this person like they show here at a meeting at 12 feet or more. Here it's talking about body art. We're not going to get into that. Okay. But this is becoming more of a conversation in the workplace. Casual dress is another conversation in the workplace. Some businesses are allowing on certain, like dress down Friday, where you can wear. Some companies allow jeans. Some companies just allow like casual pants. This is a really cool graph to kind of take all this stuff up here and on the previous page and put it into pictures. I like pictures. I'm a visual person. I have to take, when I was in college, I would have to take notes on all of this. It got really tedious, but it's the way I learned. There's something between me writing and reading and getting it into my head. I love this because I can visualize it and I can get it into my head easier. Casual apparel in the workplace, and then developing professional and business etiquette skills. We do not go over this as far as your assignment, but it is something like we talked about at the start of all this that is very important to know. Maintain eye contact, show interest, reduce or eliminate physical barriers, just to name a few. Appreciate the power of appearance. Observe yourself on video. If you ever want to see what you're doing when you don't think you're doing it, have someone videotape you, and you'll find out that it's like, I do that. Enlist friends and family. Professionalism needs to success, whether you're in criminal justice, business, medical, whatever. Projecting professionalism when you communicate. This is a really, really good graph, okay? Involves texting, cell phone, tablets, telephone presence, voicemail, internet, email, and speech habits. So this is being unprofessional. This is being professional. I have known students who have sent out their job resume in an email, because a lot of places anymore require you to email it to them, not mail. And their professional email for this organization to send them back whether or not they get an interview time. And they have something similar to Hot Babe at Outlook, Super Snuggly Kitty at Yahoo, and Buffed Guy at Gmail. I'm sorry. If I'm looking for someone to be professional, I will not even consider, as soon as I see this on their resume, I would not even consider bringing them in. I don't care how good they look on paper. If they have the whatever to do this for applying for a job, no. And I am old school. I told somebody else the other day I am old school. But there's a lot of old school out there. So this is really something for you to think about, and it's just good information. And here's some additional information. Summary of learning objectives. Again, if you're trying to take the quiz, this may help you. Also, if you can make notes of this, learning objectives, when you go to take your final, you can have your book open to do it. And the summary of the learning objectives may help you better on the final. Here's your chapter review when you're taking the weekly quiz. Besides the help in introduction, all those questions you may find answers on the chapter review because it has the objectives and you can kind of narrow it down. All right, homework time. I'm going to just minimize this a bit and get our homework up here. Now, this textbook is written more, the assignments are written more for face-to-face or blended classes. That's their primary emphasis, and we're using it online. So about 95% of the time, I have taken the exercises I want you to do and tweaked them for what you can do online. In other words, some of these says, like right here, it says in small groups, decide which, okay, we don't do small groups. Okay, so I would have taken that and changed it. But our exercise, if you look on the right, is exercise 2.2 from objective 1 on page 72. Your task is using the categories listed in the description that's over here on the left. Do the following. Identify your own soft skills. Pay attention to those skills that you think a potential employer would value. This will help you, so be realistic. Prepare a list of 4 or more items in each of these 4 categories right here. So these 4 categories, I'm going to using only phrases or short sentences. I do not want a paragraph per each one. Phrases like you would stick on a resume or short sentences. And then per example, personal qualities and work ethics. So that's this third one. You would say ability to multitask when managing a project. Okay, but you need a list of 4 for each one, which is a total of 16. Title it. If I have to figure out which one you're talking about, you're going to lose points. Okay, so you would put thinking and problem solving, and then somewhere underneath it, you're going to put 4 phrases or short sentences for this one. And that's it for this one. So now we're going to go to page 74. So we're looking for 2.14, 2.8, 9. Okay, right here. Listening, recognizing good habits. This is objective 3. You've probably never paid much attention to listening. However, now that you've studied it, you've become more conscious of both good and bad listening behavior. Now, this is an example of what I'm talking about. It says for 1 week. You don't have 1 week. So I've changed it to where your task is observe the people around you for 2 to 3 days. Then make a list of 5 good listening and 5 bad listening habits. And see, so I picked it up right here and took parts of that out. Identify the situations and participants for each good and bad listening habit. And so we go on and pretty much the rest of this. Be prepared to discuss your responsibilities in class. We don't do that. So you have to go primarily by what I have over here. This is what I'm grading you on, is what I put in Canvas. So let's go over this. Make a list of 5 good listening and 5 bad listening habits. Identify the different situations and participants for each good and bad listening habit. Then identify who's the best listener you know and what makes that person a good listener. In other words, what do you like? Both parts 1 and 2 are to be submitted in a Word document for the assignment. Okay? If you have questions, make sure you ask me. And then 2.17 is on the next page. Right here. Nonverbal communication, body language. Okay, so I'm on the right. You should review objective 4 to assist you. There are 6 body movements listed below. That's these 6 right here on the left. You should answer the following questions about each movement. So you answered about whistling and wringing your hands. Do do these movements always mean the same thing? Okay, so does whistling and wringing your hands mean the same thing? Well, no. Whistling usually means when people are happy. Wringing your hands usually means when people are upset or nervous. And that's what you would put. What part does the environment you're in play in your interpretation of the movements? Whistling environment, you may find that if you're just happy walking down the street, you're rather relaxed, is your environment, or you're someplace having a good time. Wringing hands could be if you're waiting for a super bite for your boss to talk to you, if you're waiting for bad news of some kind, and that's what you have to do. Bowed posture, twiddling thumbs. Remember, this is back in objective 4, and that's the whole thing for that one. All right, and then you submit them. Now, you will have a rubric, and for every one of these. So before you submit all these to me, come down here and grade yourself. Note, correct grammar and spelling are applied for all exercises. And so you would grade yourself. If you have any questions, let me know. And take care. And this will be a wrap up. I'm going to go ahead and post this. Bye-bye.